Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to visit with you. You know, we obviously are disappointed that the court did not take a decisive action to declare the governor's line item vetoes unconstitutional. We believe that they are. The court obviously declined to weigh in on that. You know, they believe that we had funding, and you know, we were able to take money that was appropriated for, or we would be able to take money that was appropriated for another purpose to get us by through session. But I think this is a dangerous precedence that the governor is pursuing. He has been probably one of the most political people that I have ever dealt with, and I'm disappointed that he is continuing this process of attempting to defund the legislature.
Well, let me just say that I had mentioned it before. I am shocked. I never would have imagined that the courts would have ruled the way they did. The fact that they can determine that we can run out of money and not be able to do our job is profound. I don't think it just affects us. I think it will ripple across the whole country. It's important that the legislative branch have equal power with the governor. And under this situation, we don't. And so we have to make extraordinary decisions and take money from places that we know we should not as a result of this decision. And so we will figure our way through it, but this is not right. And it's very frustrating on my end.
Yeah, I would just add that the court, their lack of making a decision on this is surprising, and I think it was wrong, because clearly under the testimony you heard several people testify, we're not going to be able to write bills, we're not going to be able to provide transparency to the people, we're not going to be able to provide legislative audits that are extremely necessary, we're not going to be able to pay our staff, we're not going to be able to pay staff benefits potentially. So it's extremely troubling that the court said that we are able to continue to provide funding, because that's clearly not the case. So it's very disappointing.
The last thing I want to say too is, you know, the meeting we just had was on the fly. We were all caught off guard. We didn't think it was going to happen. And so we're trying to figure out how do we navigate through it. And everyone there rightly says that we should stand up against the governor and that we should make serious decisions. And so even though we're a little bit divided, we're not divided. It's just how do we work our way through this, and how do we avoid unintended consequences. But there are going to be unintended consequences because of what the governor did and what the courts did. And so we're going to navigate through, but that's why you saw what you saw.
How much money do you have available to you then potentially to hold you through to February 20th?
That resolution would have authorized us to access about $3.8 million in carry-forward money that's at the LCC, and about $17 million, which is their second year of the appropriation for the LCC. And I'll caution folks that is not a decision that we wanted to make. We feel the court and the governor have forced us to make that decision. It now brings a whole another group of legislative employees into this unease of uncertainty for the future of their jobs, and certainly does not resolve the issue. The $20 million does not get us very far. It'll get us into session. We probably can't make it to the end of session on that level of funding. I haven't looked at those numbers, but I believe we probably wouldn't be able to make it till the end of the legislative session. So we will need to resolve this in the legislative session, and you know, we hope that the governor will find some newfound respect for the legislature, and I'm not optimistic that will happen, unfortunately. As I said, this governor is probably the most partisan person that I've ever worked with, and to take a legislative session where we had so many victories and so many bipartisan victories, where we just accomplished so much together, and then completely you know, discredit it with this action, I think is just really disrespectful and disingenuous, and it's pretty terrible the way he's treating our staff right now.
And what's going to happen on the Senate building, and what are you going to do on the assistance to the legislative branch as far as drafting bills and so on? Can you talk a little bit more about what comes out of this meeting?
Right now, because of the resolution that we passed, the legislature will not assist the executive branch in drafting any of their bills leading up to session, nor should we. The governor has line item vetoed the money that would have provided those services, so he certainly shouldn't benefit from those services when he was literally trying to eliminate them. On the building itself, I also believe very strongly that the governor needs to understand that there are ramifications for his decisions. He line item vetoed the money that would pay the debt service on that building, and he needs to, if the bond rating at some point is affected, that will rest solely on his shoulders. And he needs to understand that his decisions by line item vetoing the legislature, frankly, could affect the credit rating of the state. And we hope that it doesn't, and we're going to do everything we can to prevent that from happening by resolving this issue and getting the legislature funded. But in the meantime, we're not going to try to pay for things that the governor intentionally line item vetoed.
Yeah, well, so the Senate decided to make the payments through November. We were trying to protect the state's credit rating, but now we have, as we're tapping into the LCC, that's a House and Senate decision, and together we agree that there can't be any more payments on the building. We cannot go there. And so at this point, the MMB can make the payment in December, and beyond that, we're going to have to find a way to have an agreement about the funding for the House and Senate before another building payment's going to be made.
Will there be any appetite to meet with the governor, as was suggested by Senator Bach, prior to session? And is there any chance that this impasse can be resolved before session?
Well, we certainly are happy. I don't want to speak for the senator, but I believe we're certainly happy to meet with the governor. We have indicated all along that we would, at any time and any place, meet with the governor to resolve this issue. We want to resolve it. We hope the governor does. But he's the one that walked away from the table. He's the one that was kind of refusing to meet with us. So, and frankly, I'm going to need to see some goodwill on the governor's part. He needs to understand that the decisions he's making now are having potentially long-term ill effects on our state, on our credit rating, on our employees, and he needs to stop this exercise, and let's get back to the table and work together. That's what we want to accomplish. I think that just as the last session was one of the most productive in history, I think the next one can be as well, but that's dependent on how the governor acts. Right now, my level of trust for the governor is very low. He has gone back on his word. He has agreed to things and then changed his mind. And I don't have a high level of trust for the governor right now. And it's difficult for me to say that because I'm somebody who gets along with everyone. And I believe that trust is something that is necessary in our state government to have a functioning state government. But this governor has betrayed our trust, and it's going to be difficult to have a productive session when we can't trust the governor.
How about you, Senator Gazelka, your level of trust?
So I'm going to continue to reach out to the governor, but it's going to be from a position of legislative strength. It has to be that we are an equal branch of government with him and reach out to him in that vein. I expect to have a conversation with him. Senator Bach told me that he thought that the governor was going to be calling me. So, yeah, I think in the end it's important. This is a fiasco for Minnesota. On our part, we'll do the best we can. The governor's going to have to meet us halfway.
Any regret in filing the lawsuit? Because it seems like we're right back to where things were before you filed.
No regrets. That was the right thing to do. If you don't stand up for the legislative branch and the power that we've been given, and both you saw Democrats and Republicans united about that, then we back down, and governor and all future governors have more power than they've ever had before.
How is the very
I think
large
it's
bill?
important to, I don't regret it in any way, shape, or form. I think we need to take every action necessary to ensure that people's voice here at the Capitol, their constitutional right to that voice here at the Capitol is protected, and we're going to continue to do that. I think it's also important to note the court did not decide against us. They just declined to make a decision. They feel that we've got enough money to get through session. We have found a way to do that based on their order. We didn't want to do that. We think it's damaging and it's harmful. That money was appropriated for other things. We don't like that. But based on their order and the governor's action, we took that action to get through session because we need to protect the legislative branch. And I think we're going to stand strong together as Republicans and Democrats in the legislature to do everything we can to protect the legislative branch and people's voice here at the Capitol.
And what's your message to Minnesotans who may be a little confused as to what's going on with emergency funding in the Capitol?
Well, I'm going to say I'm very sorry for our governor's actions. I think that our governor is embarrassing Minnesota right now, and I wish that he would change course. This attempt to eliminate the legislature and defund the legislature because he didn't get his way, when really he did get his way and then changed his mind. I mean, it's very frustrating for us to work with him. But my message to Minnesotans is I'm sorry. I'm sorry that our governor is embarrassing our state right now, and I hope that we can quickly resolve this.
It's going to cost a significant amount of money once you get the bills for these legal bills, as well as the bill that'll probably be coming for any sexual harassment investigations. How does that fit into your financial situation?
Well, so it's already cost millions of dollars in legal fees between the governor, the House, and Senate, and that's unfortunate. We didn't think that we needed to go there, but that was the course that we were on. And as far as sexual harassment, even that, with us not being able to be in session, if there are allegations that are true violations that we have to address, we have to do that at the end through meeting as a Senate. I can only speak for the Senate. And so the fact that we're at a roadblock affects so many things, and that's just one of many.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment. If there's an ethics complaint against Senator Schoen, do you have the money to have that hearing before the legislative session starts?
Yes, and it's very, very important that we do, and with the vote today, that we're going to have other resources that we can. And so I'm still waiting to see what Senator Schoen's decision is. I've already visited with Senator Bach a couple of times on this issue. The next step then would be an ethics violation. If that group then voted to take action, then that would go to the Senate floor for a vote.
And would this funding bridge, if it were, then allow you to take some steps in terms of training and other sorts of things that have been talked about in part of both chambers that might not have been possible if you had this, if you did not have this bridge funding?
Well, frankly, if we didn't have this bridge funding, we were both planning to shut down operations of the House and the Senate, excuse me, prior to the next legislative session. The Senate had already announced their layoff plans. The House was planning to send layoff notices to our staff. But we did that, or we're planning to do that, knowing that the court would intervene and then make a decision. The court now has said they're not going to decide the case because they believe that we can get to the next legislative session. So we have abided by their order and tapped the money that they thought that we could and should tap. So we'll get to the next legislative session, but we do not have money beyond that. And there's no sense now in laying off our staff prior to the legislative session to try to get the court to make a decision, because they have closed the case, and we would need to, it's my understanding, I'm not an attorney, but it's my understanding we need to start litigation over again by bringing a new case to restore funding if we do suspend operations of the legislature. But please understand, this money will only get us a few months, and we will need to suspend operations of the legislature, and people will lose their voice at the Capitol. They will lose their constitutional right to a legislative branch if the governor does not sign a bill providing funding, or if we do not override a veto of his to provide funding for the legislature.
Just so we're clear, it does take you through the February 20th, correct?
Correct, it does. And
Okay.
to get to the heart of your question, the House is planning to proceed with sexual harassment and implicit bias training that will happen likely on the second day of session. It will be mandatory, as you know. Please understand that members of the legislature do not work for me. I cannot fire them, and I cannot compel them, but I'm going to do everything I can to compel them to attend that training, and that will include, if they do not attend the training, I will remove them from committees, and then I will let them explain to their constituents why they don't sit on any committees in the
Mr. Speaker,
legislature.
may I ask, while we've had this conversation here this morning, some very serious allegations have come out against Senator Al Franken. And most of you have probably seen it by now. There's a picture of him appearing to grope a woman, and I need to get your reactions to that on the national level. If they're serious enough, should he resign?
I will say sexual harassment anywhere, in any form, in any place is unacceptable. And I think we as elected officials need to stand together. It's not a partisan issue. We need to stand together to send a clear message that that sort of behavior is unacceptable. I don't know the details about Senator Franken, and we've obviously been busy in our meeting here, but I certainly do believe that people deserve a due process, and we certainly want to make sure that we don't jump to any conclusions. But it is the little bit that I have heard is very concerning.
The court reversed in part, vacated in part, and remanded back to the judge.
Sorry, but I'm not going to let you talk that one.
Deep in the committee discussions, all I saw was the picture on my phone. I didn't read anything. Both the speaker and I have met about this. We know that it's very, very important that we take serious action on this issue. It's a light that's being shined all over the country, and overall I think that's a good thing. And so we're looking at our processes. As far as Senator Franken, I don't want to comment because I haven't even read the article. But every time we need to look at every case seriously. I mean, there's no exception to that. I've met with Senator Bach as well a couple of times on this. I will tell you, the Senate has good practices in place. We already had a December sexual harassment meeting planned and a February one. That was pre any of this, because it's something that we all view as very important. But I'll also say that we're looking at, can we be better? And I think we all can be better, and the light being shined on this nationally, I think, is overall a good thing.
Senator Gazelka, you said you have not read the article, but you said that you saw the photo. What was your first reaction when you saw the picture?
An incredible disappointment. I mean, if you think about, well, in fact, I don't want to go farther than that, because there is a due process that you have to have, and every one of these cases has its own merits, but anything that's true is just unbelievably unacceptable. We should all stand against.
What about the culture? Senator Bach just said he thinks the culture in the Senate is better behaved than the House, even though he came from the House. Do you think that that's true? You're saying so far, you know, the Senate hasn't, because it was a Senate member when he was in the House. Is the Senate above this?
No, I don't want to comment about that. The moment you toot your own horn, something else happens, and I'm not going to do that. I appreciate what the House has done. They've taken serious action. They've taken it immediately. I appreciate what the Speaker's done. He reached out to me. We're all going to get better as a result of what's happening, and I'm glad that we have that opportunity. Even though it's painful as you're going through it, we're going to get better.
Mr. Speaker, does the Senate have better decorum, or is this a House problem?
Yeah. I don't want to get into a House versus Senate. I think, we need to all stand together to ensure that the Capitol, whether you're in the House or the Senate, or whether you come here as a member or a lobbyist or the public, we want to make sure that people feel safe and that they feel respected, and that's our number one goal. And I think whether you're in the House or the Senate, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, we are going to stand together to ensure and strive to make sure that that happens for every Minnesotan. This is a very unique place in that the legislators don't work for the senator and I. We don't get to fire them. The lobbyists work here, but they also don't work for us, so that the intricacies of these relationships sometimes would dissuade people from coming forward. But we want people to know if they feel like they've been treated disrespectfully or sexually harassed, we want to provide an environment where they can come forward, and then that we can deal with those complaints and respond to them in the appropriate way. And that's really, we're trying to be very methodical right now about how we move forward and set that process up. And we believe in the House, like we have proceeded appropriately on what's been brought forward, and we will continue to make accommodations for anyone that feels they need to report something.
Are you aware of any other allegations against House members at this time?
I am not. I think everybody hears a lot of rumors around the building, and I don't even want to speculate whether there are or not. And let's remember that, sexual harassment is something inappropriate that's unwelcome. That we need to respect that. We need to respect the victims, and I also want to respect the process that we've engaged in by having an independent set of eyes look at this. We've hired an outside firm to look into the allegations against one of our members. I don't want to make comments further because I want to respect that process and let that process play out. And I don't want to influence the process.
Is there a timetable for that investigation? Do you expect results by a certain date at this point?
I think that we're looking at maybe 2 to 3 weeks for that to complete, but I don't know that there is any end date because I don't know how far and wide that investigation may go, and we certainly want them to conduct a thorough investigation, and I don't know what kind of time that will take, but I've been told it may take 2 to 3 weeks.
Senator Gazelka, same question. You aware of any other additional allegations against any of your members? Either caucus?
Correct. I don't know of any other allegations.
And Speaker Daudt, the training that'll happen on the second day of the session, that is for both the House and the Senate, and if so, what is the goal?
The training that we have set up, and we didn't actually do that even in response to these allegations. This is something we've been working on for months because we thought it was important that members have a refresher on what's appropriate and not appropriate in the workplace. That will be the House only. However, we're willing to expand that if the Senate's interested in participating in that. But I think they may have their own process for that sort of training. But as I said, I take that very seriously, and I did when I had the discussion with Representative Portman at the end of session about the general climate and making sure we both shared the goal that we want people to feel safe and respected. So we're going to proceed with this training, and I'm going to do everything I can within my power to compel members to be there. So we're calling it mandatory, and my hope is that every member chooses to participate. And there will be serious ramifications if members don't participate.
Just to bring this back to the legislative funding again, I assume one of the first bills you'll bring forward for a state session is restoring of the funding of the legislature. Are you going to have going to pass clean bills? Or will there be other potential provisions in that bill other than just funding for the legislature?
Speaking for the House, I think our intent is to pass a bill funding the legislature that looks exactly like it did when we sent it the last time. And that would match what the governor had in his proposed budget, the level of funding for the legislature. The only caveat is we may add language that would just simply reinstate any money we've taken from the reserves of the LCC, just to make sure that everybody's whole. But
So no other provisions, because the bill that he vetoed was a lot larger bill. I mean, it was an omnibus, he line item vetoed out of a larger omnibus.
He
bill.
signed everything else in that bill, so there's nothing else that I believe was line itemed out of that bill. So the only portion that we would be sending to him would be the funding of the legislature.
And Senator,
It has to be the first bill. I mean, we're going to run out of money very shortly after that. It has to have agreement from the House and Senate and Republicans and Democrats, because in the end, if the governor vetoes it, we have to override it. So it'll certainly be focused on the legislative funding, how we're going to cover the lawyer fees. I mean, there's a number of things that I'm open to, but I'm also open to just passing the exact same bill, but we'll all be in agreement when it goes forward to the governor.
Clear up for me what-
any unrelated provisions,
No,
though?
it wouldn't be related to
those.
something totally different, no.
Clear up what's going to happen between now and whenever that bill becomes law. Are you going to be able to get in LA? Are you going to hire people? Are you going to have cutbacks? I think I heard that you won't be able to write bills between now and then. Tell me what we're going to see.
We haven't made those decisions in the House. We have a policy in place right now where we have a hiring freeze that's on, so we're not filling positions as they open. We also are not paying per diems and mileage to our members, so we've got some restrictions in place. My assumption is those restrictions probably will continue, but we haven't made decisions on that based on what happened here today yet.
Getting back to my
Well,
question.
can you answer that?
I'll tell you, I thought we were going to win. So in the end, we didn't have plans to figure out what we're going to do now. And so we don't, beyond that, I don't want to say. I don't know yet.
The court reversed in part, vacated in part, and remanded back to the district judge. You've said several times this is not a ruling in Dayton's favor. In what sense is it not a ruling in Dayton's favor?
Well, they didn't rule that his line item veto was either appropriate or unconstitutional under that section of the Minnesota Constitution. They believe that we have enough money to get back into session, which we have taken their order and exercised. So during session, they believe that we can work this out. They did, however, say if the circumstances change, they will potentially have to step in and make a ruling on that question, whether or not the governor's line item veto is constitutional. And that's the question they did not answer. And it states very clearly that they chose not to make a decision on whether or not his line item veto is constitutional. They did not act on that.
Did Speaker Zellers warn you about Representative Cornish's behavior?
He did not. He did not.
Does that surprise you in retrospect?
You know, I think that he, just judging from his comments, I think he was reacting to rumors that he had heard and not to a specific complaint that he had received. To my knowledge, there haven't been official complaints brought forward through our HR policy, through our sexual harassment policy on Representative Cornish, and there haven't been on any member since I've been a member, not member of legislature, at least as long as I've been leader. Speaker Zellers did not warn me, but I didn't know anything about the action he took at that time. I was actually on the leadership board at that time, and I don't remember that he ever took that action or discussed that with the leadership at the time.
I wonder if any of you could answer this. Senator Franken came out today with a statement saying that he doesn't recall the incident of groping and inappropriately kissing. And as for the photo that's been released, he says that it was meant to be a joke, that it wasn't, and that he shouldn't have done it. This is a statement that came out within the past hour and a half. Can I get reaction to what you make of that?
Sure. You know, I find it pretty troubling. The photo is pretty troubling when you see it, and you know, I think to say that sexual harassment is a joke, I think trivializes what is a crime and trivializes victims, and I find that deeply troubling. I think that that's part of the problem. We can't call sexual harassment a joke. It's not a joke. It's a serious issue, and we need to stand strong and firmly against sexual harassment.
Leader Pepin, can we get your thoughts on that?
Well, thank you for asking. I appreciate it. As the female standing up here, I appreciate that. You know, all the accusations are extremely troubling. I believe that no one should have to be in fear when they go to work that they're going to be harassed. And, but I also believe everybody deserves due process. And if these, you know, allegations are found to be true, I think serious action needs to be taken, and certainly across the country. I think this issue has come to light, and I think we have to wake up as a country and you know, make serious changes to our culture, not only here, but through many other legislatures, Washington, D.C., Hollywood, it's all over the place. And as Speaker Daudt said, these allegations are no joke. A picture of somebody, that picture is no joke. It's never funny when somebody touches you and it's an unwanted, or it says something to you that it's unwanted. People shouldn't have to deal with that, and so it'll be an interesting process going forward, but everybody has to, I'm looking forward to the fact that we're doing the training. I think it's an important reminder for everyone. We do it for staff as well. And I hope people wake up and realize that this is a problem, and they need to make sure they behave in a professional place. And I would hope that would be the case not only in the legislature, but in workplaces across the country. We need to treat people with respect, regardless of who they are.
Do you expect more allegations to come forth in the legislature?
Well, I haven't heard anything, you know, of course, you always hear rumors, but I haven't heard any other, like the Speaker and Senator Gazelka, I haven't heard of any other reports. We do have a process in place, and, you know, we'll deal with anything that comes out, but clearly I think it's a discussion of the culture of the workplace, just in general, that needs to be addressed nationwide, not just here.
Do you know, have you ever experienced in your mind harassment here at the legislature, either in your position as a leader or as a lawmaker?
I don't feel like I've personally experienced it as a lawmaker. Certainly I've heard things people say that are off color, or, you know, that I kind of raise my eyebrow to, but I haven't personally experienced what I would consider harassment.
Is the new investigation limited to the known allegations against Representative Cornish, or could other allegations be investigated if they come to light, or is the investigator open to other allegations?
My understanding is that it's this is specifically about Representative Cornish. Maybe the Speaker can.
Yeah, that's correct. This particular contract is specifically related to that one complaint. However, if we have other people that come forward on that issue, likely they would get referred. I don't want to speak for our HR department, but likely they would get referred to that particular contract. But we're going to take any accusation that comes forward seriously and treat everyone with the respect that they deserve as we try to find resolution to any issues that have happened.
DFL leaders called almost immediately for the senator's resignation. You've clearly taken steps, but that was not one of them. Why? Did the Senate overreact?
You know, I didn't, I said very clearly that I had not had specific examples of sexual harassment reported to me. I also didn't call for Senator Schoen's resignation myself. Maybe nobody noticed that, but I didn't feel like it was my place. I feel like, you know, there is a process in place to resolve whether or not these things are right, or whether policies or laws were violated, and I think we all have an obligation to respond to that appropriately, and we will, and I trust they will. My guess is that the Senate potentially knew about this. It sounds like leaders in the House, DFL, knew about the accusations against Schoen when he was in the House. I did not know about that, and I found that pretty troubling. We have an HR policy in the House that requires supervisors to report sexual harassment directly to HR, and apparently that did not happen, which will cause us to have a review of our policies to make sure that anyone who's in a supervisory position in the House understands how they should respond if they receive a complaint. So my guess is they were quick to call for his resignation because they knew all about this. They had dealt with it in the past, and they were comfortable making that determination based on what they had learned in previous years. That, to me, is troubling.
One more? We gotta get moving. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.